Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm going to be continuing in this video my series about Jack Williamson, one of the very earliest science fiction authors after Wells and Edgar Rice Burroughs. Got his start, I believe, in 1928 in Amazing Stories. So 2 years after magazine science fiction started, he started publishing, and he lived a very long time. He didn't die until 2006. So he lived into his 90s and he kept publishing all that time. There were some stories that were published after his death, but in 2006 he was still publishing stories. And I've read some of his later works, and I feel they do keep up that innocent sense of wonder that came with those early science fiction pulp magazines before the golden age. He was able to make his writing more sophisticated and keep up with the changing times and improvements in the quality of writing in science fiction. But he was still able to maintain that essential essence of his writing that made him and other writers popular in the 1930s, and which a lot of times is lost on science fiction writers today. They just aren't capturing that sense of wonder like they used to. So the story I'm talking about here is one of his earliest. It's his sixth published story. And it's only a short story this time. It follows The Green Girl, which was a short novel. This one is only a short story. It was published in Amazing Stories in November 1930, The Cosmic Express. And I have it in a number of sources. I have a book called The Early Williamson that was published in the 70s that collects a lot of his early works. I also have a copy of a magazine from the 1950s which reprinted it. Avon Science Fiction Reader #1, edited by Donald A. Wollheim. That I have a copy of, not with me though. It's buried in my stack somewhere. I read it in the Hafner Press Volume 1 of the Collected Stories of Jack Williamson, The Metal Man and Others, which is an excellent, excellent book. If you love Jack Williamson, you really need to have the whole series. I think it's only 9 books to the series. But of course, they're out of print now and expensive. Used prices of these are expensive because they are really nice books, very collectible. So the Cosmic Express, you have man and woman, husband and wife. Names are Eric and Nada. Kind of curious they called the woman Nothing. And they're living in the future. They have every convenience. Everything's taken care of them. They don't have to struggle at all. They've got everything. And they're bored to tears. Eric happens to be an adventure writer who writes about times of the past where people had to deal with hardships. But of course, he has no idea what it would really be like to live in the Old West or in prehistoric times or in medieval times. Well, there's a company, a business that gets started up because they have a new technology, basically a matter transmitter, but it's not called that here. It's called the Cosmic Express service. And it is basically matter transmission from point A to point B instantaneously without crossing space. And I may be wrong. Somebody tell me if there's any earlier instances, earlier than November of 1930, of anybody writing about matter transmission. But this is the earliest I'm aware of at this time. This is the earliest story I'm aware of that ever talks about that science fictional concept. Of course, matter transmission would become a major plot driver for some of Larry Niven's stories in the 60s and 70s, particularly the story Flash Crowd. But in 1930, I personally am not aware of anybody else talking about that. I think Williamson was the first. So Eric and Nana, of course, they're looking for adventure. They're looking for some place where they don't have all the technological conveniences. Cosmic Express was built mainly to just transport people around to the populated cities of Earth, and you know, just a quick way to pop in and see your friends on the other side of the world. But Eric has a friend at Cosmic Express, and his friend had mentioned that he was able to open up a line of transmission all the way to Venus. And Venus being totally untamed, Eric and Nada decide they're going to call up a favor from this friend and get him to send them to Venus. And they do. I'm going to go ahead and spoil this story. So if you want to go and read this story, stop now. Though I'm going to tell you, if you're not a big fan of Jack Williamson or a really big fan of these kind of clunky early pulp science fiction stories, there's not that much that you're going to get out of it. And that's why I'm willing to just spoil it. Eric and Nada, they end up on Venus and they're freezing and there's animals coming out trying to attack them, and it's raining all the time. They can't get a fire started. They didn't bring any matches. They're miserable. But their friend, he was smart. He was able to retrieve them and bring them back to Earth after only having them there for that one day and night. And Eric and Nada are now convinced that they should just stay in their comfortable apartment and write about adventures and not actually experience them. Um, like I say, it's a pretty basic story. Aside from the possible first appearance of matter transmission, there's nothing much interesting about it. There's nothing, Venus as a world isn't very well imagined. The characters are stiff. The dialogue is really stiff. So I can only recommend it to those of you that are diehard Jack Williamson fans like me. And you will, if you're a diehard Jack Williamson fan, you'll get a kick out of this, but mainly because it's early Williamson and it's, of historical interest, not because it's a really great story. It isn't. It just isn't. So that's the Cosmic Express. And I'm going to continue on. His next work, he goes back to working with Miles J. Breuer for a novel, which is called The Birth of a New Republic. That will be my next Jack Williamson. Till then, have you read The Cosmic Express? Leave your comments in the comments section about The Cosmic Express, about Jack Williamson, about matter transmission. If you happen to know of an earlier story with matter transmission, I am very interested in hearing that. So let me know if I'm wrong about that. And otherwise, come on back for The Birth of a New Republic and lots more by Jack Williamson. and all the other authors I'm talking about here on Telltale Books.